everyone, welcome to Jewish Wisdom for Coping with a Pandemic. This week, we are going to be having our first week exploring the soul trait of trust, which is kind of a challenging one. I would like us to begin the way we always do, with a short meditation. So please close your eyes and relax. Take in a deep breath through the nose and hold. And exhale through the mouth and hold. And again, inhale through the nose and hold. And exhale through the mouth and hold. And as you go at your own pace of inhaling through the nose and holding, and exhaling through the mouth and holding. If thoughts should come into your head, just observe them and watch them pass. Like watching a wave float past on the ocean. Imagine you're in the water, floating up with the wave, and then floating back down again as it passes. There's nothing to do, no planning, no thinking, just floating up with the wave on the inhale and floating back down on the wave with the exhale. And on your next inhale, think to yourself, Shema. And on the exhale, listen. Shema, listen. In Shema, we're listening deeply, without judgment, without offering advice. In Shema, we're listening with an open heart. Shema, listen. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes. Well, hello, I see we've had a bunch of people join us. Hello and welcome. So to get started today, we'll begin talking about this phrase, this too is for the good. So there's a lot of, the Hebrew phrase is gamzu l'tovah. The idea is that something happens and it seems like it's not a good thing. You know, we say gamzu l'tovah, this is for the good. It's associated with trust, trusting that even when things aren't so great, there's something good that can come out of them. This is one of the more extreme elements of trust, and we'll kind of dig into that a little bit later. But right now, I am curious if any of you have an experience to share where something that started out as a negative, it actually turned out to have a positive, or had something, a silver lining or something positive that came out of it. So would anyone care to share? Okay, Joanne. Hi, welcome.
Hi. Well, I just found something I wrote probably a number of years ago already about, it was a thing on gratitude and being grateful for even bad things. And my experience was that when I had breast cancer back in 2011, And I went through it, first of all, I guess it developed in me a more, I don't know if enthusiasm is the right word, but it's more strength to fight, So it kind of was building character.
Mhm.
And I think that after I survived, thank God, I felt like if other challenges came up or other things I wanted to do, that I was maybe in the past would have been more hesitant. I said, if I can get through cancer, I can do this too. And I think that was a very positive thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne. Carrie.
When we were looking for a house, we got in a situation where we only had 3 weeks left to buy a house and get out of the rental after a failed attempt at buying another house. And we had one prospect, the one we're in. I hated it. I thought it was horrible. I was miserable. There were a lot of things wrong with it. I thought Home Depot had thrown up in it. So, but it turns out to be an absolute fantastic deal. I mean, we've got an acre of land and I have, the outside is what I wanted. So I'm dealing with the house shortcomings, but I am so happy we finally got it because now I have a studio and a big garden and lots of space, and it really has turned out well. And I'm very grateful.
Thank you. Thank you, Carrie. Yes, Sue.
Made me think of something because I didn't have anything. So my best friend and neighbor of 30 years moved kind of suddenly. And so that was the negative thing. And the other part of it was that she lived on a farm and had this big greenhouse. And we used the greenhouse over the last 10 years actually as kind of an event center. We had music come in and we had parties. So it was originally a greenhouse, but then they sold that business. And so then we made it we brought music into it. And my husband loved that so much, that idea of bringing music into it, that now that she's moved and sold that greenhouse, which was so sad, he's building a new one on our land. And even better, so because we looked at the faults of the last one, and so now we're building it a better one. And so that, I mean, that's a good thing. And I still get to see my best friend because she didn't move out of state, so I still get to see her. But out of that we're building another one. So I mean, that's a good thing that happened.
Yeah.
Oh, and then my husband gets to live his dream. His dream is to have these musicians play. And that's his dream. And he got that dream from having musicians in the old greenhouse.
That is awesome. Thank you, Sue. Okay, so I recognize you and I see it's C. Feinstein, but I cannot remember your first name.
Hannah.
Hannah, yes.
Yeah. It just actually Sue this kind of goes with that, which is that's just happens to be a kind of a practice that I've been trying again sort of for the last maybe week or so of whenever something annoys me or doesn't go the way I wanted it to, expected it to, or something, to just stop and look for that. Find it, find the lemonade, like determinedly, like I go somewhere and it's closed and I think, oh, if I hadn't have done that though, I probably would not have taken that walk. And I really needed to do some walking, get some exercise, things like that. Doesn't matter what it is, find it. Anyway, it's been good. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Hannah. Bonnie.
So my experience was similar to Joanne's. My cancer was in 1999, and I was 52, I think. And the cancer was far worse than anybody had ever expected. So it was surgery chemo, radiation, reconstruction. It was breast cancer. And I was sharing with somebody that even during the chemo, which was months, I would get up, drive to the athletic club, change clothes, go out to class, take my step. So if all of you remember step class from that era, 5 minutes a step, go back, take a shower, go home. That was an hour. And I was thrilled I could do an hour. And what that taught me was that I can do it. And I've had other situations where, yeah, I can do it. And right before the pandemic, I flew to Uganda and tracked the gorillas in the Bwindi Mountain. And I flew by myself. And it was just an amazing experience. And having those kinds of difficult things and getting yourself through it, I think just builds the kind of resilience that the pandemic didn't knock me out. I couldn't go to the gym, so I found hikes all over Santa Clara County. Anyway, thank you. And thank you, Joanne, for saying it first.
Thank you, Bonnie. Anyone else care to share? All right, well, let's go in a little bit deeper. I said earlier that I could not remember what I was going to share about Gamzu Litova, or this too is for the good. And I still don't remember what I was going to say, but something else did happen today where I'm in this semester, I'm taking clinical pastoral education, which has a 5-hour workshop or 5-hour class every week where people are sharing like their experiences, and it's peer support, and it's either Sunday nights or Monday nights. And I really wanted the Sunday night section, and I was put in the Monday night section. And so it was from 5 to 10 on Monday nights. And I'm like, my week is going to be shot. I'm never going to recover from that. 4:30 to 9:30 on Sunday isn't better, but I just said, I'm not going to I'm just going to figure it out. I will let things unfold. This will work out okay. And then yesterday an email came out that somebody wanted to change. And so I switched. And it's kind of, I did take a trust approach to that this is going to turn out okay, whatever happens. And so I'm really pleased I'm in the Sunday night section. So let's go into trust a little bit more. So we're not going to look at the assumptions this week, but could someone please read this first bullet?
I will.
Okay, Bonnie, great.
Trust is a powerful sense of optimism and confidence based not on reason or experience, but on emunah, faith. You know that God is good and she's the only one in charge, and therefore you have no fears or frets.
Great, thank you. And may I have someone else to read the second bullet, please?
I will.
Okay.
Many Mussar masters argue that faith in God is required for Mussar practice in general and is a precursor to trust. I disagree, which is why faith is not one of the sole traits I teach.
Who's that?
Thank you.
Greg Marcus. Mhm.
He's incredibly wise and good looking. But I'm going to post both of these quotes in the chat box. So starting with the first one from Rabbi Tzvi Freeman, what is his view of trust? Yes, Martin. Martin, if you could remember to unmute, please.
Do you think he means blind faith?
I don't know. What do you think?
Well, let's see. Let's take an example of if there's blind faith. Let's just say you were to trust Bernie Madoff.
Mhm.
Blind, was the people, just, it was blind faith that they would not get financially hurt, right?
Yeah, so I think that is, I think what you're giving an example of is trust in general. Here, trust is, we're talking about trust in terms of the soul trait, where the Hebrew word is bitachon, but it's more about this other trust that things are, going to turn out okay. And you're
Okay.
absolutely right that, like with all soul traits, having too much is not a good thing. Like clearly with Bernie Madoff, that blind trust was a terrible idea and did not, really ruined a bunch of people.
Mhm.
Yeah. So what else? What are we seeing? His major point though about the benefit of this. Bonnie, what are your thoughts?
Well, once you gave the Hebrew term bitachon, I remember living in Israel that was security. And that for me fits right in to this, which is it's a sense of optimism, it's a sense of confidence, it's a sense of security.
Mhm.
It works for me.
Yeah, so it's having this idea of optimism, security, things are gonna turn out okay. And even when, we've had the setback, it's maintaining that sort of optimism. And Rabbi Freeman, he says this is based, it's predicated on trusting in the divine, trusting in the creator. That, or it might be trusting that it's a benevolent universe and that, most things are good and are going to turn out okay. Karen.
So I have this thought that there's a difference between what turns out to be okay and what turns out to be the way it should be. And so for me, trust doesn't completely alleviate fears or otherwise at times. And I don't think that it always means things are going to turn out okay as I define okay. But I do think overall that there is a way that things are supposed to be. And I think that also comes from hearing that perspective on what is good may not actually be what is good, and perspective on what is bad may also be incorrect, but we need distance to see those. So those are my thoughts.
Yeah, thank you, Karen. A lot of good things in there about perspective and distance, and our definition of being okay might not be, it doesn't mean it's, I think that's a really important point. It doesn't mean it's going to turn out the way you want it to. But there's, yeah, Hannah.
If this isn't off, maybe a little bit off subject, the difference, like the meaning of faith, emunah, in Hebrew, I know things like charity, tzedakah, is very different from the English or Christian sense of, it doesn't have as much of it's different. So emunah, is there also a difference between when I hear the word faith in English or what's sort of in this culture as opposed to emunah?
Joanne, did you want to answer that, or did you have another point?
No, I had another question.
Oh, okay.
So-
Let me take care of Hannah's question. So
Or comment.
I think, so I'm not an expert on faith and what it means in the different religions, but I think one of the biggest differences between Christianity and Judaism is Christianity is foundationally about belief. It's belief that Jesus was the Savior. And as I understand it, if you have that belief, then that's makes you a Christian. Judaism doesn't have like a central belief about that, belief in God, but emunah I've heard it defined as kind of knowledge, just kind of understanding of the way things are, and so it's not that same thing. Now, someone who's Orthodox might give a different answer, but that's the best that I can offer.
Thank you.
Joanne.
Yeah, what came to mind to me is that this, I'm sure it's one of the Psalms that says, don't trust in man. Put your faith not in man, put it in God. And even if you think God is your higher power, from turning within, you're in a much better situation than putting your faith in some other human being.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of, like what we were just talking about, when things are not good, there's often a good, either a challenge to you that will help you, expand one of your soul traits, or there's, you're going to learn something that you really needed to learn. And, it's kind of a test and it's kind of a challenge. And so that's, to me, what faith in God is, Gamzu Tova.
Thank you, Joanne. So we have Sue, and then Eliana, and then Martin.
Always thought, okay, so first of all, I have the basic question of the difference between I can never say that, bitachon,
Bitachon, yes.
bitachon and emunah, trust and faith. So I've always been confused by that. And then I am also confused by these two quotes, because I always thought trust was trusting in God, and that God was central to Mussar. And so reading that second quote of yours, I was a little confused that you don't look at faith. I always thought it was centered around God. So maybe if you could explain the difference between the two, and then your feeling about the God piece.
Right. So trust, bitachon, is trust in God. That's kind of the traditional view. And in the first quote, we see that, where it's like having this trust. Well, if you're going to have trust in God, then you need to have faith that God exists, that there is a God, that there's a certain type of God. And I haven't always been sure about the divinity. I haven't always been sure about God. And I was much less sure when I started my Mussar practice than I am today. Yet I still found this idea of trust in God very powerful and transformational for me. And so that's why I say it can be trusting in the universe. It can be trusting in the divine within yourself. It could be just this kind of faith and optimism that things are going to be okay, based on just your belief in yourself and the way the world works.
And then what is the difference between the trust and the faith? What's the difference between those two words?
The faith has to do with this idea that there is a God. It's specifically kind of divine centered. And trust is more about kind of the outcomes of life, that things can turn out okay.
Okay, thank you.
This is, I think I told a story in the book, and I think it's in the Yirah, the Awe chapter. And this was a true story. It was one of my first Mussar Kala experiences. It was a Mussar retreat from the Mussar Institute, and someone was up there telling the story how she first got started with Mussar, and so the rabbi said, "Well, get started, on trust." And so she went home. She started looking into it. She's like, "I don't get this at all. This is really hard. This is way too hard for me." So he said, "Okay, well then you should study Yirah, which is this combination of fear and awe of the divine," which everybody burst into laughter, because that's even more complicated than trust is. It was like a very kind of bonding inside joke moment where everybody there kind of knew what it meant. So this is a complicated one. And often people who teach Mussar either don't teach it or they teach it at the very end. And I choose to teach it really early, which is different. And maybe we'll get into that a little bit later. Eliana.
When I read this and started thinking about it, I thought back to when my babies started walking. And they would take those little steps with their arms out and kind of fall toward me or Tom, and they knew we were gonna catch them.
Hmm.
You know, they had such faith, they had such trust that we were there for them. So
Mhm.
that, to me, I can look at that as the bigger context of God will always catch me. And I don't even have to think about it. And it's also, to me, a letting go of ego. As soon as I realize I'm not in charge, you know, I'm not going to force the world to go my way, then I can relax. I can
Mhm.
relax and I can allow holiness or whatever to happen. And have no fears or frets. You know, all those words that's a big pack of a lot of words. So
Yeah,
that's what I think. Okay. Thank you.
thank you, Eliana. Okay, Martin.
Thanks, Greg. So I think it seems like this idea of trust in God or faith in God, it seems like it's most useful if it's within your inner self.
Hmm.
And the reason I think that is that I'm thinking about the Jew in the bunker in the camp may not be saying to himself, Jew is for the good.
Hmm.
Because that's involving external circumstance. But if you focus on trust in God or faith in God from the inner being, well, then you can be kind of divorced from the reality that you might be gassed. And so that way you can get some inner peace. And so maybe that's the personal value of this idea.
Yeah, thank you, Martin. That's a very powerful example. And I really like that connection to kind of the idea of inner peace. And, you know, Viktor Frankl, the author and psychologist and Holocaust survivor, he wrote that, you know, the only freedom we truly have is we're free to decide how we react to circumstances.
I agree. Yeah.
And so, you know, sometimes really awful things happen, and it's how do we cope with that? How do we deal with that? And I really love this idea that Eliana said about, you know, God's always there to catch us. And I used to, before it broke, I had this little Hamsa bracelet, and I used to think, you know, well, God's always there to hold my hand. And I used to like literally hold on to the little Hamsa, which does everybody know what a Hamsa is? It's like this little hand.
It's our hand.
Yeah, hand symbol. They're popular in Israel and actually throughout the Middle East and North Africa. I think the Yemenite Jews, when they came to Israel, sort of brought the Hamsa in. But anyway, it's really this powerful idea that, oh, and there we go. There is Stephanie with a Hamsa.
Guess that makes sense.
Yeah, there are so many different ways, designs of them. They're
Missed
really,
it.
really cool. So yeah, so there's this idea that maybe we can be caught, maybe we can be helped. So is it, you know, I guess I want to kind of come back to this question, you know, for the second part that we started to raise. Well, you know, does there need to be a role for God in this? And, you know, for some people, you know, they really struggle with this idea of God or what God might mean. And, you know, is anyone just kind of struggling with this conversation and getting there? Yeah, Nancy.
Yes, I really appreciate you uh outlining the difference, really, because I guess I can trust that things will be okay, but I don't have faith. I don't know. I struggle with that. I don't know what that means to have faith in a divine, because I've heard sometimes from people that, oh, the if you trust in God, only when things go right is there a God. When things go wrong in the world, there's not a God, because if there was a God, why doesn't he make everything perfect?
Hmm.
But to me, what goes along with trusting is giving up that control. And it's so interesting we're talking about this trust because I don't want to take it, but I just got a call from my real estate agent. And it's like I had 2 showings yesterday on my condo. And I'm like, oh my gosh, is this the big news that somebody, wants to give me an offer? So my kids just moved out of my condo. My condo is going on the market. It's very stressful, but I'm trusting, not in the divine, but that things will work out for the good. And that is me stopping control and having to micromanage every little thing that's going on with something that happens in my life. So that's the difference for me.
Yeah, thank you, Nancy. And I love that connection to giving up control and not micromanaging things, because in the description from Rabbi Friedman, it is like having a sort of a calm and a peace. And if we're just sort of like, I don't need to control what happens, I can just let things unfold and figure out it'll be okay. Then it's a very different kind of style of life. Paul.
I think Linda raised her hand before I did.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Linda.
I don't know where this fits in or even if it does, but when I was in seminary, I came upon the term deist and I latched onto that. Deism as opposed to theism. So theism, a God is central. And deists kind of look at it like maybe a God created the world, but then moved on.
Hmm.
And that was so profound for me that I didn't go any further in trying to understand what it meant to me. Like maybe the God who moved on had to trust that we wouldn't destroy ourselves and had faith that we would survive. But I, like Nancy, I appreciate the conversation because it's not one that people usually have.
Yeah. Wow, that is so powerful that
Mhm.
God moved on and had to trust that the people would not destroy themselves. That's incredible. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Paul.
Mr. Gregg, yes, hi. So I find this to be just, endlessly fascinating, really, because for me, I was raised in a sort of a Christian. I mean, my mother, my father were not strictly, brimstone kind of Christians, but they were trying to raise me up right, and this is what they knew. And I just everything that I found out about the Christian God didn't make any sense to me at all, and so I struggled with that for quite a while because a lot of my friends, they were at least mildly, oriented that way, and I knew there was something going on, but I didn't know what sort of a name to put on it. And like Linda said, when I came upon deist, that was one thing that made sense to me. I think also when I was in college, I took a class in world religions, and we studied a lot of things, but those who were much more spiritually oriented, all of a sudden that made much more sense to me. There was a German, God, I'm really blanking on his name right now, but he talked about our soul is like a mirror that can be reflecting the light of whatever is out there, and that's, to me, that made more sense. It wasn't a personalization. It was not somebody up on a cloud with a big beard and stuff like that, which never made sense to me. But it's over my life, I have had experiences where I've let go and let something larger than me take over. And I think it's only really that I feel like I can be sensed there like in the last 5 years, I've been in a 12-step program that has given me a framework, and Mussar also gives me a framework for sort of being able to understand the spiritual technology that's involved, for lack of a better term.
Mhm.
Of I can feel like I'm centered if I do certain things, and that's, you know, gratitude, it's breathing, meditating, mindfulness, and then I get a sense of being not by myself. You know, that there is a higher power around me that
Hmm.
is. It's comforting, but it's more than comforting. It feels like there's a relationship there. But again, it's not to a person. It's just to a, I don't know, a process or a system or something like that.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah, it's a great conversation. Thank you.
yeah, you're very welcome. Okay, we have Karen and then Joanne.
One of the things I was taught that I passed on to my children is that, and this is, I guess, my opinion, is that we can't ask God to help with anything tangible, but we can with intangibles. And I really wanted my children to develop a trust and a faith in a supreme being, so that when things got difficult and they said something like, "Oh, God, help me," they had some kind of connection.
Hmm.
And then I took it a step further to say to them, if you've lost something precious, you don't ask God, help me find it, but maybe by having this relationship and talking to God and saying, help me slow down so that I can notice. And then when it shows up, it's like, oh, thank you for helping me find it. It's no, that relationship helps you slow down, and you're basically asking for help with the intangibles. And so the intangible here is that you have a more keen sense of noticing what's around you.
Hmm.
So that's my take. I don't ask for something physical or tangible. And in my conversations, if I'm, frustrated or I'm upset, even if it could be a near tragic situation, it's not, can you save someone's life? Because sometimes that's just not going to happen and it's not in my control. But I'll talk it through. Please be with me. Please help me, give me the strength. And somehow I find that to get through. And I'm like, oh, I see something else here. And it's not because God put it in front of me. It's because my relationship allowed me to notice. That's how that helps me.
Yeah, thank you. The relationship, helping you notice. Wow, such a really powerful conversation today. Joanne.
So I've had these conversations with my son because he's a Buddhist, and says he doesn't know if he believes in God, or if he does believe in God. His concept is that God is everything, everywhere. And I think that's really a very Jewish view, but I didn't say that to him at the time. But I guess in one of Debbie Friedman's songs, she says, everything is you. And I think it is, if you connect to your, inner self, or your higher power, whatever you call it, that's the connection that's going to help you. And even if it doesn't give you the answer you want, it'll help you get through whatever. But sometimes it does give you the answer you want. And there was a book by a Buddhist, I forget if he was Korean or Nepalese, but it was called Do You See What I See? And it was kind of like that idea that everything in the universe is available to you. You just have to connect to it. And that's a different idea of God, not a person, but a power, a light, a connector.
Thank you, Joanne. I think a lot of our society has been so influenced by this image from the Sistine Chapel, which is literally like a big old bearded guy up in the clouds. And, a few years ago, I started thinking about the end of the first line of the Shema, God is one. And when I was a little kid, I asked somebody, I was like, oh, it's just a reminder that there's one God. But I got this new understanding of it, which is that God is one with everything. You know, that it is a very different, you know, we all have that divine spark. There's divinity in, you know, all parts of this world. And the book of Ecclesiastes, you know, it says we, you know, one of the messages from there is, you know, the best way to understand the creator is to look at the creator's world and what was created. And so, yeah, there's, you know, no right or wrong answers to any of this, but it's really fun to explore. Sarah.
I also come from a 12-step background, and a phrase that I've learned there was God can stand for good, orderly direction. And I like that because it's kind of, things happen the way they're supposed to. And, you know, we have to often let go of outcomes. You know, you do the next right thing and you let go of the outcome. And so that, you know, then, you know, I know I'm not in charge, but, you know, if I do the next right thing, good, orderly direction, then I'm more likely to do the right thing than left to my own devices.
Yes, that's I like that framing, and it reminds me of coming back to trust, the mantra, you know, trust in God, but tie your camel, you know, and the tying your camel part is like that next right thing.
Right.
You know, it's not like, you know, getting back to Martin's question earlier, it's not just like blind faith that it's all going to work out. You know, we have a very important part to do.
Yeah. Got to do the footwork.
Yeah. Yeah,
Action.
absolutely.
Action. Yeah.
Hannah.
It's just I'm of at least two minds about trust and faith. And just listening to the comments from some other folks, the mom talking about the trusting babies and having that kind of trust. Some babies shouldn't be that trusting. And we all probably find out as we go along, which is one reason why we're not as trusting as babies, that sometimes, you know, we learn to discriminate. Sometimes it's not a good idea. And then on the other hand, it does seem like those times when I can be more have that sort of that openness and that sense of something, I don't know, faith in the universe or what it is exactly, but something, it does seem like it leads to, I don't know, better outcomes, more effective outcomes, more, it's really hard to kind of put your finger on it. And I totally don't want to be, in a sense, almost kind of like, you know, blaming, I don't know, but, you know, the babies, they got hurt, you know, they should have use better intuition or something. I don't know. So I don't know how to sort of balance those. Trust is a really hard one for me. How to balance that idea of kind of letting the goodness of the universe be there, and also not you know, how do you do both? I don't know.
Yeah. And I think part of the reason why this is hard to talk about and hard to describe is that we're talking about something that exists in heart space and in head space. This isn't an intellectual exercise. And so if we try to intellectualize it too much, it actually can cause anxiety, because at a certain level, you know, letting go of the outcome, the rational mind, the ego, why would I ever want to leave this in someone's hands other than my own? No, I got this. I can do all of this. I can control all of this. And no, you can't actually. And so that's where the kind of reassuring piece comes in. It's like, it will be okay. but it's not an easy, it's not easy. Let's see. So I think given the time, by the way, I think we're not going to do breakout groups today because I think we're kind of on a roll here. So we're just going to kind of keep rolling. We have Sue and then Martin.
So I had two thoughts. The first was when you were talking about that God is one, you know, echad, with everything.
Mhm.
I was thinking about the Shema, and if we trust that God is one with everything, then the sort of you know, an if-then thing, then we can let go. And I like this word, shmita is my word that I'm trying to, because I've been sort of doing that as a mantra to try to let go of things.
Mm,
So I was like Shema and then Shemitah, because, you know,
mm,
Shema is, you know, you're one with everybody. If you can, God is everything, and you trust that, if you can let, and then you let go.
mm.
And the other thing I was also thinking, my second comment was that I'm a control freak. I'll admit it. it's like a thing, right? But I was just thinking about this, that controlling something takes a lot of effort. I mean, you have to be on it and involved in it. And it's actually easier in a way, which I never thought of before until we started talking about this, that if you kind of let go, and it's less work. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I never really thought of it that way. I don't know if that's going to help me, you know, but you know, there you go.
Cute.
It's less work and potentially a better outcome too. So it's a win-win. Let's see, Martin.
Yeah, at moments when trust by itself is a challenge, I'm thinking of President Reagan's comment when he's with Gorbachev: trust but verify. So,
Mm,
and then maybe that can help calm some of the trust issues.
yeah. Yeah, we don't want to go too far into the, Martin, you're definitely the voice of don't go too far. You know, you don't want to trust blindly, that there are limits and boundaries. But it is so it's for each of us to kind of explore. So Linda, and then I just want to open it up for people who maybe haven't said anything today, if they would like to share, and you're not required to, but let's start with Linda.
I received this saying one time that a garden is evidence of faith.
Hmm. Yeah, I was thinking about that too. I mean, the one of the really things I found so surprising and interesting about being in rabbinical school is appreciating how agricultural the Torah is. I mean, the Judeans, they were farmers, and you know, God brings the rain, but everything else happens on its own. You know, God doesn't need to make the plants grow. As long as there's rain, they will grow on their own. They sort of have that essence. A lot of things can take care of themselves with just a little bit of help here and there. And yeah, so I get it. I love that. Would anyone care to comment or share if you have not yet today? Again, not required. Okay, that is fine. Yes, Stephanie.
So this topic is so wonderful to hear that I just wanted to listen, but I do want to say a couple of things because several things were said that I am really working on for myself. And one thing is, I did not have a religious upbringing. My family was Jewish, but it was not something that you know, was really practiced a lot, although we did have a Jewish star for Hanukkah, but I don't, you know, other than that, there was nothing else. So I always felt that there was something missing in my life. And there has been some connection with me to a spiritual type of definition of God. And I think some of the things that you mentioned, Greg, were things that I have been able to follow. One is that God is the creator of all, and that I have a strong connection. We all are created by God. And so for me, I need to practice that connection to this higher power. And I've been starting to feel little by little, but that it really comes from my heart. It's not a castle in the sky, or like you said, that man with the the long beard, but it's something in my heart, because to me, God has created some of the most amazing things in the world and all of us, and also that God is good. And so I have been feeling that as a place in my heart where I just need to feel, because it's something I can't see, but maybe I can feel it the more I practice this. And because it's so new to me, I have to believe that that I am loved, I am not alone, that I am created in the mind of God, and that I will survive, I will be protected. And it's amazing how, if I just can let go sometimes and let God, whatever this is, that I will be okay, because I can look at things in the past and say, wow, you got through that and you were on your own, nobody around you to help you get through that. And I'm going to be going through something in the next week and a half, getting eye surgery on both my eyes for cataract surgery. It has been a very difficult thing for me to do, because I am going to be alone. And I just feel like, how am I going to get through this? And I've been working on this idea of trusting God and feeling that feeling of God within me. And this has all been so helpful for me tonight. I just can't thank you all enough for sharing. That's all.
Well, thank you so much, Stephanie. Thank you for, I'm glad that this has been a helpful conversation for you. And thanks for sharing your experiences of it. Would anyone else care to say something if you have been silent, maybe you disagree or bewildered or unhappy with this conversation, or just taking it in? But you know, I was thinking about our friend Carol Emmerich, who died a few months ago, and remember, it was one of the other cycles of trust. And we were looking at that same slide, and she was focusing on the bottom part, whereas, you know, you don't need to have like that faith. And I think what we've heard here is a lot of people have a lot of different conceptions of what it means, and you know, that's okay. And for some it might be, you know, the world just kind of chugs along, but I can still kind of get behind this idea that there's something. But I think Carol was very pleased that she wasn't being, didn't feel pigeonholed, like she had to kind of believe any one thing. And that's, you know, honor her memory by sharing that as well. Sue.
Wanted to, oh. Yeah, I just wanted to write down, I just wrote down these three things that I liked was let go, less ego, let God. That's what I got from the conversation. And it was very helpful. I echo that. This whole topic is fascinating and helpful.
Great. Yes, Eileen.
I think the last thing I have to say, and we've talked about this a lot, trust and faith, which I don't have a lot of faith. I do have a lot of trust, but more than anything, I have acceptance.
Wow, powerful word, acceptance. Yeah. And that can sort of help when we're accepting. It also kind of helps us get out of that sort of need to effort and fight and change what really can't be changed very well. So yeah, that's a really important contribution to what we've been exploring. Paul.
Yeah, thanks, Eileen, because that brought to mind something that I've been, that I've been working with probably the last 6 months or so, which is to really focus on gratitude, and that for me, you know, and I thought of you as well, Stephanie, that for me, opening up my heart means if I focus on like what can I be grateful for, like at the end of the day or the first part of the morning. Sometimes it's only one thing out of the whole day that I can be grateful for. But if I focus on that, that is like a little seed that I can have grow in the garden, you know, like overnight while I'm sleeping, let's say, using many metaphors, mixing them up all over the place. But it really does help for me anyway. And that is how I start to train myself to really observe those parts of the world or my experience where I feel like there is something out there that is, you know, larger than myself, that is providing in some way. And it's not just for me, it's providing for all of us. So thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you for sharing that practice. And I think that's a good segue to, as we start to bring today to a close, I've put in the chat the mantra and also the actions, you know, possible actions. And the mantra is trust in God, but tie your camel. That's one mantra. And maybe it's, you know, I think Sue came up with like a great little mantra, but I would really invite everyone to try two things. You know, one thing we're going to cover next week is I want to talk about, well, given this is so challenging, why is it that I choose teach this early? Why is it that we focus on, you know, this challenging topic? And maybe to tie that with a little bit of, you know, trying some kind of practice for the next week, you know, of saying the mantra, of, you know, here's some things which might inspire you to pick something to focus on, asking for help, using a mantra to counter worry, surrendering the need for a particular outcome, also very related to acceptance. It's related to a lot of things that people have brought up. Taking some kind of action to help other people, you know, which kind of gets us out of our own head and our own worries. And, you know, this idea that God will be there to hold your hand or to catch you. And that, you know, also the trust and faith in our own divinity, our own selves, that whatever happens, we'll be able to handle it. So I think you can copy and paste those out of the chat, or you can write them down. But let's just take a moment. Once again, close our eyes and relax. And take in a deep breath through the nose and hold. And exhale through the mouth and hold. And focus your attention on the light that's filtering through your eyelids. This is the light of your divine spark. Allow yourself to experience that light. Without judging it, without trying to explain it. Without any expectations. Just know that it's there with you, that it's a part of you. allow yourself to experience that confidence that it's always there. And you can always just close your eyes and see that little spark. And just know that it's there. Now open your eyes and continue your meditation. Keeping them maybe a little bit closed. And just look at the other souls, the other sparks who've been sharing this journey with us today and many days. When you're ready, you can take a deep breath and fully come back into the room and fully open your eyes.